In a functional society, possessed of natural resources and automatic machinery such as we have in America, the abundance of physical wealth resulting from mass production methods of operation can be so great that a differentiation of income actually becomes a handicap. Under such conditions, the best way of distributing income is equally to every citizen within the operating area of that society. When this is done, every man, woman and child in America will have more than it is convenient to use. At last, the Archbishop's third specification for a Christian society will be realized. Every citizen will have sufficient income to make a home and bring up his children properly. Poverty will no longer exist in America. Every citizen should be guaranteed freedom of worship, speech, assembly and association. This is the only one of the Archbishop's suggestions that we even approach in our present society. Yet freedom of speech is rather an empty phrase when, in many instances, a rigidly controlled press prevents what we might have to say from being heard. Let us realize that here, again, we see the interference controls of the price system in active operation. An outstanding example of how this control is exercised is shown in the subject of technocracy itself. How often do you read, in your large metropolitan papers, of any activity of this organization? Even a mass public meeting in Hollywood Bowl does not rate more than a line or two, if that much. The reason, of course, is that technocracy is not a pleasant subject in the exclusive circles of business and finance, and it just isn't mentioned. The newspapers, of course, play ball with these groups because it is from those sources that they derive most of their revenue and they can't afford to antagonize them. And in most of our colleges and universities, can a professor discuss or present, in any way, the subject of technocracy? With few exceptions, he cannot. If he did, he would quickly find himself out in the cold, cruel world, without a job. The college authorities cannot afford to offend the banking interests, who, perhaps, have loaned them money and hold notes or mortgages. They too must play ball. We use the example of technocracy only to illustrate our point. The press in a price system must look out for its own interests, and the kind of news or editorial policy which best serves that interest is the kind of news we get. Quite frequently it is distorted and colored to serve the interests of a pressure group. That group may be a political party, a labor union, a religious denomination, an industry or business, or any of 100 or more individual or group interests. Very seldom does a newspaper take up a fight in the best interests of all Americans. It cannot afford to do so. An excellent instance is being shown to us today in the increasing propaganda designed to create distrust and hatred for Soviet Russia. Well, now that World War II is over, we are in a mess from an economic standpoint. Another war will provide markets for our heavy industries and the problem will be solved. As technocracy has frequently pointed out, the price system, at the point to which it has now arrived, can survive only through the medium of vast government spending, and what better means of forcing that spending than another war? And that nasty word communism makes Soviet Russia unnatural for the artists of propaganda and lies. But in the American technate, when our newspapers will probably be operated by the communications sequence, with no interests to be served other than those of the American people themselves, we will see a very different picture. Facts can then be presented without the ever-present danger, in a price system, of stepping on someone's toes. There will be only the editorial policy, the presentation of factual information. Archbishop Temple's fifth suggestion for what he considers a Christian society is one toward which labor unions made considerable progress in the past few years. This suggestion is that every worker should have a voice in the conduct of the business or industry in which he works. But here again let us note the wide difference in having a voice in business and industry today and having a voice in the operation of your own industrial or service sequence in a technate. In asking for a voice in industry today, are we in any way concerned with anything beyond what we ourselves make in a financial way out of that industry or business? Are we concerned with the quality of the product or the effectiveness of the service? In a price system, we must remember always that quick turnover of merchandise is necessary in order to assure a good return on the original investment. But in the social operation of a technate the reverse is true. Here it is to the best interests of the worker, who, incidentally, would be personally responsible for doing everything possible to assure the greatest degree of efficiency in his particular operation, to turn out the best product science and engineering skill can devise. The less turnover of merchandise, the less human labor would be necessary, but without loss of purchasing power as is the case now when human labor is not needed. And so once again we see the conflict between our present social system and what we call Christianity. In many cases today, the worker does have a voice in management, but it is a very weak and ineffective voice and can never have any effect in providing the best product or service which it is possible to produce. In the scientific operation of the technate, however, he will be expected to do everything in his power to raise the standards of production in the sequence in which he works. The sixth and last of Archbishop Temple's suggestions, which we will analyze, can be quickly disposed of. It is right in line with possibilities seen by almost every scientist and engineer. Every citizen should have sufficient leisure, 2 days rest and an annual holiday with pay. Why stop at 2 days rest? Engineers will tell you that it is possible, with our present automatic machinery, to cut necessary human labor to about 4 hours a day and 4 days a week for most workers. But what would happen in a price system if we attempted anything like that? If we increase wages to twice what they are now, we would still average only about $35 a week each. In other words, most of us would still have a very low standard of living. Private enterprise could not possibly divide the work among the entire working population, pay enough for a high standard of living, and still come out on top with a profit. And yet we know that 16 hours a week is all the human labor necessary to operate our various industries and services. Obviously, in order to take advantage of that possibility, we must install a new kind of social system differing from any existing today. The design of that system is what we call technocracy, a government of function, in which politics, finance and business have no part, and in which all our industries and services will be streamlined into functional sequences for the purpose of producing the physical goods we use and for providing all necessary utilities and services. The distributive system will be designed in such a way that every citizen will receive an abundance of goods and services without price or profit. Few of us will need to work more than 4 hours a day, 4 days a week for 165 days a year. Would that leave you sufficient rest and vacation for you? So here, if you agree with Archbishop Temple's ideas, is your Christian society. After 2,000 years of talking about it, we can now achieve it. Install the functional design of technocracy and your Christian society comes into existence automatically. You won't get it by merely wishing of hoping for it, or by any program aimed at moral reconversion. You can get it only by first understanding the conditions which make it necessary to our continued existence. Then by joining the organization which has the blueprint for that kind of society and working diligently to achieve it. Join Technocracy now.